Okay, well, good evening. My name is Stuart Hinds, and I serve as curator of special collections and archives at the library at UMKC. And a big part of what we do there is we house the Gay and Lesbian Archive of America. And that's what I'm here to talk to you about tonight, is how that archive got started, what's in it, and some ways that different kinds of artists have used the collection. And then if we have time, show you how to actually do just that, use the collection. And so that's the slide I was going to talk over. So GLEMA started in 2009 as a partnership between UMKC, the Kansas City Museum, and the Jackson County Historical Society. Leadership at each institution. I was at UMKC. This gentleman was at the Kansas City Museum as the director, and the director of archives and education at the Historical Society had long been interested in starting up a queer archive for Kansas City. And in December of that year, the museum received a gift of all of the AIDS Walk t-shirts from the very beginning. And so we thought that would be a great way to launch this project. And so we all got approval from our various administrative overlords to move forward with this project, because none of us knew what it was going to be. And fortunately for us, because when you start a new project like this, you have to do a lot of outreach, because nobody knows about it, nobody knows what it is, nobody knows what you're trying to do. And fortunately for us, at the time, there were 2 weekly alternative publications printed and distributed in the city. And we made the cover of both on the same week. And there was also a magazine called Camp. It was a print publication that eventually was a monthly. And they gave us a lot of coverage to help us get the word out about what we were trying to do. Unfortunately, within the first year, the Historical Society shifted gears and they stepped away from the project. They didn't, as they noted, they didn't want to run the risk of offending a board member. And there were some rumblings also at the museum, people questioning what we were trying to do with the project. And so, despite those challenges, we we continued to move forward. And the nice thing about having the museum on board was they had a very steady funding stream. And so they were able to sponsor a lot of programming and a lot of, in particular, print publications. And these are some of the programs and some of the print publications that the museum funded and spearheaded. They had a very interesting lecture series called Community Curator, where someone from the community came in and did a talk about something in the collection, the little book on the AIDS Walk t-shirt collection, that initial gift. We did a trolley tour, and a couple of trolley tours, and the Merry Princess was a takeoff on the museum's long-standing holiday tradition, the Fairy Princess. And drag performer Melinda Ryder served as the Merry Princess. And with the Fairy Princess, kids go up and tell the Fairy Princess what they want for Christmas, and she waves a wand and a trunk opens up and they get a gift. And we kind of parodied that with the Merry Princess. But by 2014, there was a leadership change at the Kansas City Museum, in part because of the museum director's work on GLAMA and its growing success and visibility. And so since 2014, it has been solely a UMKC-led initiative, and it has gone gangbusters. We have surpassed our wildest expectations, both in terms of stuff coming in and in terms of stuff being used by different kinds of researchers in the community, our campus community, and the community at large. And some of the types of materials that have come in have included things like photographs. So these are different time periods. This is from an '89 Pride Festival. That's an early 2000 festival in Westport. That was a bar on Main Street across from CVS, and that was a community bookstore, the Phoenix Books, located on Westport Road where that hookah shop is next to the Taco Bell. We got a really interesting collection of images of the community in the 1960s. This is a set of images that dates from 1959 to 1968, and this mosaic wall is the exterior of a bar in town called the Colony. And these came to us as slides, 35mm slides. And so we scanned them, and I had some prints made so that I could take them around to senior members of the community to help us identify folks, because none of them were identified. But the slides actually were stamped with the month and the year of processing. And typically it was November, so we think a lot of the images were from Halloween, because in a number of different images, folks are in different kinds of costume. There was also a big drag ball scene in Kansas City in the 1960s, and there are images in the series from a number of those drag balls. All of these images are available on our website, and what's interesting about all of them is that the subjects in the photographs are looking directly at the camera. If you took a camera into a gay bar in 1965, you should get a lot of this, because people don't want their images captured because they could suffer some pretty serious ramifications as a result. And so what that tells us is that the people in the photographs knew and trusted the photographer. And as it turns out, the donors who gave us the slides tracked down who the photographer was, and he was a member of the community. He'd been a bartender at a local bar here, a couple of bars here, and in other cities. So folks knew this guy, and they trusted him, and therefore we have this really rare record of social life in Kansas City during the period. A lot of different kinds of publications have made their way into the collection. These are 60s and 70s publications, and most of the early publications are from activist organizations. Typically they're newsletters, and that's what this is, and that's what that is. To my knowledge, this was the first commercially produced publication aimed at the queer community in Kansas City. It dates from 1977. National publications that made their way to Kansas City, and these are largely, well, this set anyway, is from different kinds of national organizations, activist organizations from different time periods. Commercial publications and community-based publications that have made their way here and ultimately made their way into the collection. The collection has a lot of different scrapbooks, and this is one of the most memorable. These are pages from one of the most memorable scrapbooks. This was put together by the mother of the guy who started Kansas City's first gay and lesbian advocacy organization in 1966. And she would clip articles from the newspaper. She would clip Ann Landers and Dear Abby columns, advice columns. She wrote a lot of letters to politicians and other public figures, and when she got responses to those letters, she would paste those in the pages of her scrapbook. And what's equally compelling about the objects, there are two of them, are the fact that she repurposed wallpaper sample books as her scrapbooks. The way you used to, I guess you still do, but the way you used to buy wallpaper, you'd go to the paint store and you'd sit at a print rail and you'd look through these big, giant wallpaper sample books. And so the pages would have the same design but be in different colors. And as I mentioned, Mrs. Schaefer was a thrifty sort of person, and like I said, she repurposed these scrapbooks. So not only are they a pretty incredible record of mainstream media coverage of the community from the mid-60s to the mid-80s, they're really kind of a beautiful sculpture. Lots of flyers from different kinds of events over time, political events, entertainment events, fundraising events. Lots of ephemera, stuff like buttons and matchbooks, stuff that would normally be tossed, be thrown away. This is a fold-out fan from the Jewel Box, which was a drag bar in Kansas City throughout the 1960s. In my department, we also house a sound archive. It's a collection of 450,000 sound recordings. Most of it is commercially produced music on LP, but there are tens of thousands of 45s and 78s and radio broadcasts, that kind of thing. So with the Glamour materials, when somebody has LP, in particular LPs, we can take them from them because we have the space to appropriately house them, and we have the equipment to play them back. It doesn't do as much good to collect them and not be able to hear them. And then some things that we didn't expect to ever get. This is a cartoon. This is an original cartoon artwork from a woman who did this work for a local publication, a bar magazine, a free bar magazine that was published in the 1980s. And it's an interesting window into the pre-computer age of cartooning, and when you would white out the mistakes that you might have made so that they wouldn't then be reproduced when the thing was printed. We have a collection from an AIDS activist who was involved in a group that handed out condoms during the AIDS crisis. They would go to bars on Friday and Saturday nights and hand out condoms and explain why you needed to wear them, why it was important to wear them, how to wear them appropriately. And that's a very difficult conversation to have with a stranger, right? Particularly a stranger who's inebriated. And so the condom manufacturers recognize that, and so they try to inject a little bit of sort of dry humor into their packaging. And this one reads, "Have a lifesaver, there's nothing sweeter than safe sex." Of course, the condom expired in 1991, so it really is an artifact. But students love the fact that the archive in their library has condoms. They just can't believe, but you can't believe that. So with all this stuff, like I said, there have been a number of different ways the collection has been used by a variety of researchers. Of course, our most immediate audience is our students, and this was a presentation that an undergraduate student did at this conference on history. This has been before 2015, and he actually had his essay published, ended up having his essay published in the premier scholarly historical journal for Missouri, and he won Article of the Year for his work. His work focused on pre-Stonewall activism in Kansas City. The school publishes, every year they publish a journal of undergraduate research, and we've had a number of students have their work published in that particular publication. At one point, we were giving out a research award annually to students for different kinds of projects, and a number of those projects involved collections in Glamour. One such work was this film. It's called The Ordnance Project, and it is an hour and 40-minute documentary on the effort to get an ordinance passed in Kansas City that would prohibit discrimination based on sexual orientation and or HIV status. And that was an effort that happened in the late 80s and the early 90s. The ordinance was passed in 93, and the folks who were involved met incredible resistance to that effort. And this is a sampling of the film.
In the initial presentations, the opposition was so large, they actually moved it to the full council chamber.
The sponsors are both here in attendance, Mayor Berkeley and Catherine Shields. We have just a multitude of people that have signed in to testify. And, you know, if you all testify, we're going to be here forever.
My name is David Wida. I'm a citizen of Kansas City, Missouri. I stand before you today in earnest support of this ordinance.
I'm a citizen of Kansas City, Missouri, a supporter of the Human Rights Ordinance Project, and I have to say I've never been prouder to say that I'm gay.
Today, you sit in judgment of an ordinance that will give my lesbian sisters and gay brothers a life They have not known before in this city a life of freedom.
We tried to form different coalitions, have different churches come in, business people. We tried to get a wide variety of people who would come in and testify.
We do not have the freedoms that others in this room have to come and speak our mind, because many of us face job discrimination, and by being here and speaking in favor of the ordinance would lose our jobs, would lose our apartments. And it is this issue that we're asking the council to correct.
That's what was going on, and then there was the horrible opposition on the other side.
Public acceptance of homosexuality is the final stage in the destruction of any nation.
The militant breed of homosexuals and lesbians think that because of their own choice to flaunt and brag about what takes place in their bedrooms, they should be granted civil rights above and beyond the rest of the American population.
They want to be quote unquote married like heterosexuals, but they cannot reproduce. So they turn to children to abuse and recruit and pervert into their ways.
I believe sodomy is a sin. I will not have a sodomite teach my children.
I sat there in ordinance testimony hearings, and people were crazy.
Today, it is special rights for a few people who choose to live a certain way. Tomorrow, it will be special rights for those who want to express themselves, say, by going nude to work, or maybe nude to the baseball game. Where is it going to stop?
Fortunately, there wasn't a rash of new people going to the Kansas City Royals in the early 1990s, but that just gives you a flavor of this really remarkable film. The student did it as his dissertation for his PhD. It's a great film, and he allowed us to put it on the Glenma website so you can watch the film there. Starting in 2014, we offered, for the first time on campus, a class on queer American history. And it's been offered pretty much every other year since. And I'll talk more about the next iteration of the class, but it's proven to be very resonant with our students. And one of the other things that we tried to do with this effort was to incorporate into both the traditional historical narrative of Kansas City and the traditional queer history narrative, the fact that there was all this activity going on in Kansas City. There was a lot of activity going on in Kansas City. And it's through opportunities like this chapter in this book that we've been able to do that, as well as altering the commemorative landscape of the city. In 2016, we installed this historic marker commemorating the first in-person gathering of gay and lesbian civil rights leaders that took place in Kansas City in February of 1966. And that led to the formation of Kansas City's first gay and lesbian advocacy organization, the Phoenix Society for Individual Freedom. And we installed this marker down on the northeast corner of Barney Alice Plaza, across from where the hotel was, where that conference took place. Don't go looking for it right now, though. Barney Alice Plaza has a hole in the ground, and we've been promised that the marker will go back once all that construction is done, and we will be keeping an eye out to make sure that happens. And then 3 years ago this month, we put in a marker right down here at 27th Terrace in Charlotte, commemorating Womantown, which was an early 1990s initiative to establish an intentional urban women's community by a group of lesbians that was really quite successful, drawing people from across the world to come here and buy property in the Longfellow neighborhood, which is south and east of Hallmark headquarters. But we've also worked with artists to alter the artistic landscape of the city in a variety of ways. In 2024, we worked with this muralist, Gaia, who blew in from New York City and wanted to use materials from the collection to do a mural that he had been commissioned to fabricate as part of the World Cup effort. And this is the first half of the mural. This is one of those 1960s images, and that's a stage performer. Her stage name was Edie Gregory. And they performed at the Jewel Box, which at that point was located down on Main Street near 31st and Main, where the Wendy's is. That's where the Jewel Box was. And right across the street from where this building is was where Milton's Jazz Club was. It was a very well-known jazz venue. So that's why he incorporated both sets of those images into the work, and there it is in production. Just last week, this mural was finished over in Westport, on Westport Road and Central, on the west side of the building that houses Passions. And it features images of drag performers from the late 19th century to the late 20th century. We worked with this artist, Ruben Castillo, who is a printmaker, and he was particularly drawn to those scrapbooks, those wallpaper scrapbooks. And he's done a number of installations, like I said, utilizing those content from those scrapbooks and patterns from the wallpaper and different kinds of means of incorporating those pages into his work. And he's been quite successful at it. He is in upstate New York now. He taught at the Art Institute for several years, and we collaborated on some projects for his students in his printmaking class. But like I said, he is now, I believe is it Syracuse? Skidmore yeah. In upstate New York, yeah. Another artist who came in from New York City who was commissioned to do a piece for what was called the Atrium Project at the Kemper Museum of Contemporary Art was Sarah Zapata. And she came to the archive and researched. She was very, very interested in Womantown and in early 1950s, 1960s lesbian advocacy. And so this is the piece that was in the atrium for a year, from 2023 to 24, and it was a giant thing. I mean, it goes all the way up to the ceiling. Womantown has proven to be resonant with a lot of different artists. This is a zine that was put together by a student, Josie Newman, working with faculty in the art and media and design department, and she came up with this really slick. It's a little zine, but it's quite successful. She did a lot of scanning of collection material. She brought her own scanner and everything, and it ended up being a really, really great result. We worked with filmmakers who did a 30-minute documentary on Womantown for Kansas City PBS, and we actually also worked with the crew from a Peacock show called The Gentle Art of Swedish Death Cleaning. Their first season featured a number of, it featured people from Kansas City. There was about 6 or 8 episodes, I forget how many. And one of the episodes featured a woman who had been and still lives in Womantown. And Sue Moreno is her name, and she herself was an artist, but she had also collected a lot of artwork. And the deal with the Gentle Art of Swedish Death Cleaning is cleaning out your crap to make it easier for those who survive you, so they don't have to deal with it. And so, as part of that process, Sue donated a bunch of material about her experiences living in Womantown to the archive. So they came and filmed at the archive, and it was a really great experience. This was a film produced by a group out in California. Esther Newton is still living. She started out life as an anthropologist, but sort of became an anthro/historian. And her first book actually focused on Kansas City in the 1960s, in particular the drag community in Kansas City in the 1960s, because there was so much going on at the Jewel Box and out in the community. So she came here and did her research, and when they made this film about her, they reached out to us for images and stuff and content from her time here in Kansas City. The same filmmakers who did the Womantown film followed it up with a 4-part series on AIDS in Kansas City, and Emily Woodring there on the left, on the left, and Cindy Woodson. The filmmakers actually won 2 regional Emmys for their work on that series. We've worked with a lot of different kinds of performances. This was a performance from 2013 called An Otherwise Hopeless Evening. And what it was it featured a series of one-act plays by the well-known Kansas playwright William Inge. William Inge is a contemporary of Tennessee Williams. And the folks behind the production had discovered in the correspondence of Inge, in their research, that he had been to Kansas City to see drag shows. And so given the time period, the chances were very strong that the shows that he saw were at the Jewel Box. And the building that housed the Jewel Box is still standing. It's at 3219 Truce. It's a little 2-story building with glass brick windows on either side of the doorway. At this point, it had been converted into apartments. And so we were able to, it was magical how this all came together. We were able to convince a couple who were living on the first floor to move out for the 6 weeks it took to do this production. We found them free housing and worked again with the producers to do these shows. And it was about a month-long run in February of 13, and after the last performance, Glamma and the show's producers sponsored a drag show. So drag returned to the Jewel Box after 50, 60 plus years, and at that show, the late Sandy Kay, long-time drag institution in Kansas City, just passed earlier this year, turned over one of her gowns to the collection. One of the producers of this production is also a student, and for his dissertation, he is producing what he is calling a queer taqua. The queer taqua is based on the 19th century and early 20th century idea of a chautauqua, a traveling series of education presentations, performances, that kind of thing. And he's got 5 different performances of the chautauqua coming up, the queer taqua, coming up in October. And so keep an eye out for that, because it should be really, really compelling. We had a student from Lawrence Middle School come and work on Womantown for her History Day project. And she did a spoken word performance about Womantown for her History Day project. And actually, she won the regional competition and she won the state competition. And this month she took it to nationals in Washington, D.C. And of course there are kids from all over the country, but she was one of 12 who were invited to, in her case, do her performance at the Smithsonian. And I haven't heard back yet if she won anything, so I need to reach back out to the family. We've also executed some art exhibits based on collection content, and this is one example. This was from 2023, and it features work from a gentleman who had lived in Kansas City and gone to the Art Institute. His name was James Leahy, and he had passed from complications due to AIDS in 1993, and his mother had been maintaining his massive collection of artwork since that time, and earlier that year she had made the decision to finally turn it over to the archive. And so in commemoration of that, and in commemoration of him, we hosted a show at the gallery at the Kansas City Art Institute, which featured a lot of his work. He was a textile designer, surface designer, and did works on paper. And a complimentary exhibit was held in the Special Collections Gallery over at the library that featured some of his early drawings and some of the material from the collection that sort of reflected his working process and influenced his work as well. And then 2 summers ago, we actually installed a piece of art that was created by another Kansas City Art Institute individual. He was young. For a couple of years, 2-3 years, I had taught the Queer American History class over at KCAI, and he had been one of my students. And for his senior project, he wanted to create a piece that illustrated moments of queer history in Kansas City. And he was a ceramics student, and so he made this piece and over the course of his fall semester, and then we installed it in the spring semester. And this is part of the installation process. It's a big piece. It's probably 12, 14 feet by about 4 or 5 feet. And that's what it looks like. It's in the reading room of the Special Collections Department and the Gay and Lesbian Archive of America. So who knows? If you make a piece, it might show up in the collection and on permanent display like this one. And so we've got all this great stuff. The question then becomes, well, how do I get to it? How do I use it? And so a little orientation to archival work. Has anybody done any archival work before? It's not cumbersome, but it's different than sort of traditional, Lord knows, traditional looking stuff up on the internet or traditional library research. And let me get out of here and pull up this. Yeah, we can just do the first one. So if we go to the GLAMA website, that's how you're going to get to information about the collections. Because what happens when we get a donation is 99 times out of 100, it's not organized in any way. And so we spend our time organizing the material in a way that makes sense for the collection and for users of the collection. Basically, the rule of thumb is like goes with like. So all the correspondence might go together. All the promotional material might go together. All of the photographs will go together. And then that material gets put into folders, and the folders get put into boxes. And equally important as we do that process is we create an inventory to where that material ends up. And that inventory is called a collection finding aid. And it's the collection finding aid that you will encounter before you ever, at any archive, before you ever actually get your hands on collection content. And so to get to our finding aids, you click on that collections link. And in our case, we have collections that are processed, as we say. That means they have been organized and they have a finding aid. But we also list our collections that aren't processed because we want people to know what we have. It can still be used, it's just not organized. And so you find one that has a finding aid, so you click on that, and that takes you into a database of our finding aids that gives you some brief information about the collection. And then over here on the right is sort of an outline of how the collection is organized and what's in it. And so if you wanted to look at this document that says houses for sale in the Womantown neighborhood, you would click on that. That gives you information about that specific item. Most importantly, it tells you where in the collection the item is. It's in box 1, folder 3. You know how when you go to the library and you look up a book and it gives you a call number. So you can go to the shelf and pull the book off. This is our call number, so that we know that in this collection, the Barbara Lee collection, box 1, folder 3, has this item. And so then we can pull it for you, because ours is a closed collection. You don't get to come in and browse. You work this way and identify what it is you want to see, email us to make an appointment, and then we'll have your stuff ready for you but when you get there, so that you can use it in whatever fashion you want. And that's basically how that process works. It's got all sorts, this database has all sorts of search functions. The collections page has search functions, so you can search for terms, subject terms. You can search for types of materials like scrapbooks or diaries or letters or correspondence, whatever it is you're looking for, the types of things you're looking for. And then, of course, perhaps the most fruitful way to discover what we have is to reach out to the curator of the collection and say, hey, I'm interested in XYZ, what have you got? And then we can work together to make that happen, because that's how all these other projects have happened, is folks reaching out directly and saying, I'm interested in doing this kind of work, what have you got to support it? And so with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have. Yes, ma'am.
I would fear that, like, if I asked you to pull things, I would ask for like a lot of things. Like, what's that appropriate or average amount of things to have pulled?
Well, it just kind of depends, because the recommendation might be to start small and come in and see if that stuff meets your needs, and then if not, we're happy to pull more either while you're there or for a subsequent visit. Because the thing is, our hours really suck. Our hours are Monday through Thursday, 9 to 4:30.
Yeah.
And we recognize that those aren't great hours for a lot of people, except maybe a bunch of undergraduate students, right? Yeah. And even then, seriously, we will work really closely with you to kind of figure out and hone in on what it is you might need. I have, and this is very unusual in an archive, I am really, really blessed in that I have seen everything come in to GLAMA. And so I really have a strong sense of what's there. And so it's take advantage while I'm still there. It's easy for me to kind of say, we don't really have anything.
Sure.
Like the guy who did the drag mural.
Right.
He was like, have you got anything on this person or anything on this person? I knew right off the top of my head that we didn't. So, but again, it's not a fast process either.
Sure.
by any stretch of the imagination, because you're going to encounter stuff that you hadn't expected, and working with us may lead you down a path that you hadn't anticipated, a completely different path. That's happened a lot, and so it is to your benefit if you're going to do serious work to reach out, and we'll make it happen.
It bears some repeating that this is original research that you do. Now this material has been pre-digested or prepared for you to understand. That happens with other people's scholarly projects and artworks. But when you're looking at material in the archive, that's just the stuff, and you find the story, the content, the thread that is meaningful or interesting to you. That is often a frustrating thing to some procrastinating students, because they don't find the information interpreted for them by AI or by some other scholar ready for them to consume on their own. You do. That's what you do.
Yeah, I think that's the exciting part too. That
Yeah.
I would think, be like, oh my gosh, let me see it all.
Well, and it's not online. I mean, that's the expectation of our students, is that it's online, and it's not.
Yeah.
We've got some stuff online, but we've got way more that isn't. I've got a guy who's coming in from, I think he's in Florida. He's coming in July. He's an artist, and he got a grant to do some traveling in the Midwest because he's from the Midwest, and he's particularly interested in agricultural stuff and stuff that shows domestic life. And so And he reached out March or April, and he's coming in July. And so I've been able to think about it and recall the both processed and unprocessed collections we have, which isn't a lot, but there's some that I think will suit his needs. And we've even had some stuff come in since he first reached out. We have this really, really cool, for lack of a better term, they didn't call it this, but it's a domestic partnership arrangement that these two women drew up. They were both therapists, and so they drew it up between themselves. This is like 90s and maybe even 80s, and they signed it. And one of the ladies had passed, and the other one had saved it and gave it to us with the collection. So it's just stuff like that that I'll remember. That hopefully this guy will find pretty interesting. Yeah.
Are there any questions?
All right. Well, thank you all so much for coming. I really appreciate it. And feel free to reach out. If you're interested, I am offering our Queer American History class this fall. We will meet on Sundays from 2 to 4. We offered it for the first time last fall, and it went really, really well. And it was a nice experience for everyone who attended, and for me as well. And we had it was a really intergenerational experience. We had young people, undergraduate students, to people my age and older, and we cover from the late 19th to the early 21st century. It's a survey, and there's a little bit of reading, but only if you want to do it. There's no homework, there's no tests or anything like that. It's telling the stories. And we also offer tours of the archive. It's a community archive, but it's also a research archive. So stuff isn't on display all the time, like at a museum. But the interest is there, and which is why we offer these tours and try to offer them quarterly. My July tour is full, and so the next tour that we have is October 10th. And I pull stuff from across collections. We arrange it by theme. So there's a drag table, there's an activism table, all this other stuff. And then we just kind of walk through it. I contextualize it for folks, and they get to engage with whatever it is that draws their interest. And then we go back behind the scenes and see where stuff lives. Yes, sir.
Are these activities free and open to the public?
They are free and open to the public, as is the archive. Yes. So if you're inclined, those will be going on this fall. That's some of the programming we're doing this fall. So again, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks to our recording engineer.